Hey, Bus Bench Babes, it's fall of 2025, and maybe you're seeing the headlines where, tons of houses are sitting on the market and sellers are slashing their price, and maybe you think the sky is falling. Is the sky falling? Maybe, maybe not. This is the podcast episode for you. We're going to break down everything that's happening in the fall real estate market, and I'm going to keep this hyper local to the Twin Cities, but some of this might have some trickle over effect to other parts of the country. But arming yourself with knowledge about what's really happening in the market for sellers and buyers this fall will be super valuable. Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. Hey, Bus Bench Babes, Beth here doing a solo episode, and we are talking 2025 fall real estate market predictions, and we're talking about all the things. And there's always the questions that come up, and this is a great episode for real estate agents where you're like, I just need a few talking points because people keep asking me what the market's doing and I don't really know what to say. And this is also great for the sellers and buyers that are sitting on the fence going, well, what is happening in the market, Beth? Give us the download. So I'm going to dive into all the things, kind of like break it up into different sections and just kind of like talk about like high level stuff. And I'm going to focus primarily on the Midwest, but some of this might resonate for other parts of the country. But let's just, full disclosure, I'm really focusing on the Midwest and have this be a little bit more hyper local. So interest rates, what's happening? It's so interesting when I think the consumer, if they're not buying or selling a home and not really in the mix of that, think that interest rates are higher than what they actually are. Interest rates are the lowest they've been in a year, and they're just slowly ticking down. We're not seeing any big, huge jumps. We're not seeing any big price slashes on interest rates. The Fed maybe will be teasing us with some interest rate reductions later this year. Jobs report came out last month and wasn't super great. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more on the rate cuts. But right now, interest rates, I mean, if you're looking at like a historic average, yeah, these aren't COVID rates. These aren't like the 3% rates, but they're a lot better than what they have been. A couple years ago, we had rates tick up to nearly 8% or right around 8%. And now they're like hovering in the mid sixes. So that feels like a really big win. And that feels like pretty affordable interest rate in the grand scheme of things. The interest rates aren't as sexy as they were during COVID, of course. So I do think that's keeping some sellers on the fence that would love to move up and sell that house that they're currently in that might not be serving their needs right now, but they're like, oh, I'm really having a hard time getting one up by like 3.5% or 3% interest rate. I feel you. I wouldn't want to give that up either. But then does the conversation need to be different? Does the conversation need to be something like, well, let's see what it looks like for you to become a landlord, like turn your property into a rental property and then buy your next home using some of the rent that you get each month as the leverage to sort of like make a wash of your current house payment. Does that make more sense? There's just a lot of different ways to do it. It's not like you have to put a sign in the yard and sell your house in order to get to your next house. There's different ways to make that happen. And if you really don't want to give up your 3% interest rate, I think that's a great tool to keep a house payment really, really low. And then you would maybe potentially be able to cash flow on a rental property. I also think that we're in like a little bit of like a weird limbo in that interest rates aren't like what I said, like they're not COVID interest rates, but they're not sexy enough for some buyers to take action. It's been really interesting on some of our listings that we've had mid to late summer, because on the back end, I can see all the analytics. Like I can see how many buyers are looking at them on Zillow and realtor.com and on the MLS. I can see buyers and agents that are looking at my properties. So we had a listing that had over 10,000 views online. And that's a lot. In case you're wondering, well, is that a lot or is that not a lot? I mean, that's a lot of views. And showings were really, really, really slim on that. And it was a gorgeous house in an amazing community. So it's so interesting how a lot of buyers are just sitting on the sidelines. And Google also dropped a stat recently, and it said the search, people that typed home for sale or homes for sale into Google, recently, that number is the highest that it's been in 2 years. So what does that number tell us? That number tells us that buyers are wanting to buy homes. Buyers are thinking about buying homes. They're Googling, they're looking at properties online because I can see that on my listings, but many of them are not taking action. They're sitting on the sidelines. I don't know what they're waiting for. I don't know if they're waiting for that crystal ball that says, ooh, interest rates are going to be back down and there's going to be a 5 in the front of the number. I'm not sure what buyers are waiting for in that regard, but I think that we are in this little sweet spot of time right now where there's a lot of homes that are doing price reductions. And we'll get to that a little bit further in this episode. So listings that are doing price reductions, does that mean that the value is being slashed? No, not necessarily. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we're seeing price reductions. Some properties are still seeing multiple offers, but not all of them. So as a house, if it's been sitting on the market and a seller's done price reductions and interest rates are lower, but maybe you could even negotiate seller like a 2-1 buy down or a 3-1 buy down to get the rate even lower. Like there's a lot of things that really could put a buyer in the driver's seat if they're really willing to think outside the box. So why are buyers sitting on the fence? I feel like that's a big $1 million question. Inventory is on the rise. Inventory of homes for sale is up about 25% across the metro area. And we can feel that because listings are getting fewer showings. So this rule of thumb doesn't always apply. I'm working with some buyers and we wrote an offer on a mid-century modern stunner in mid-August or early-ish August. And it was one of those houses that it needed work. The last time it had probably been updated. The kitchen had probably been updated in the 2000s, but it had wallpaper in the house that was clearly from the 80s, like my vintage of high school era. But it had the most beautiful lines. It had the screen porch what screen porch dreams are made of. Proximity to downtown Excelsior was amazing. It felt underpriced, in my opinion, based on the location and the style of home. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. If I could only sell mid-century modern homes with like beautiful lines, that would make me so happy, because every single time I've ever had a mid-century listing, and not just a rambler that was built in the 50s. I'm talking about like a true mid-century modern style home. Every single one I've ever listed has gone into multiple offers in any market. So that is the type of home that there's a huge draw for that in the Twin Cities. So one popped up on the market. We've been eyeing it and, we were stalking it when it was coming soon. We got a showing. They weren't allowing any overlapping showings. And we got to the house. We literally had a 30-minute window for a showing. And I'm like, okay, let's get in and get out. Let's go in and see the house. And then we can be outside maybe like when the next showing comes in. But holy cow, it was hard to see that house. And it was so beautiful. And I'm walking around going, yeah, I could see Mark and I retiring in a house like this. It was really, really, really cool. My buyers and I wrote a really aggressive offer. It was a super clean offer. I communicated with the listing agent. Like I did all the things. My lender called. We did all the things that we do to make an offer stand out. And we weren't even close. House was listed at $450 and they got 2 offers that were $650 or higher. And we're like, what? I knew it would go over, but there's no way. I didn't ever think in a million years that would go $200,000 over asking price. Like that is crazy. And he ended up having over 40 showings and over 14 offers. And it's just like, we didn't even stand a chance on that one, but we put our best foot forward. And I told my buyers, I'm like, you have to feel good that you brought out the big guns. And if they didn't accept our offer, then you just didn't think the house was worth that much. And I honestly didn't think it's worth as much as it sold for either. But you just never know. Every buyer has a different reason or, motivation for wanting to buy a house. But overall, I would say inventory is up, except for those special properties. We had another listing that was an absolute unicorn, and we ended up getting 6 offers on that one. And that one sold for considerably over asking, but it was a completely remodeled house in a certain part of town. And it had checked all those boxes for a really special listing. The average listing is sitting around longer. And especially if you have a condo in the Twin Cities, they are taking 90 days or more to sell. And so being really, really clear and setting those expectations with my clients when I'm putting those properties on the market. We just had one and it was in a great part of town, and it was nearly new construction, turnkey house. And I'm like, your house is beautiful. However, where we are right now, I said, I am going to tell you that it would be shocking to me if we went under contract the first weekend. And they're like, oh, they were disappointed, but they said, we would rather have you set the correct expectation now, so we aren't disappointed with you saying, oh, we're going to get an offer first weekend and maybe we'll go into multiple offers. I said, it is very likely we'll go into multiple offers and we probably will not sell first weekend. Here's the average amount of days it's probably going to take to sell. And then when we sent them their first update when they were on the market, they're like, thank you for all this information. And they said, we're really glad and really thankful that you didn't tell us our house would sell first weekend, because we would be really disappointed. But it's following the cadence exactly how you said it was going to go. So just really knowing what's happening in your market, whether you're in the Twin Cities or wherever you are in the country listening to this podcast, knowing your information so you can set the expectation correctly with your buyers and your sellers will just make everybody so much happier, and it'll reduce questions, it'll reduce frustration, all those things, and set you up as an expert. So let's talk about pricing. This always gets so hard because when buyers see that homes are reducing their price, that doesn't necessarily mean that the sky is falling. In fact, the sky isn't falling. Foreclosures are still insanely low, not record lows, but there's very few foreclosures happening across the metro. And when you see a price reduction, it likely means that the seller had an unrealistic expectation of what was happening up front. And you do your best to price a home, and you only have to go on is historical data. Like in real estate, we don't have that crystal ball to know what's going to be happening 30 days, 60 days, 90 days from now. And you do your best educated thing about okay, well, this is what typically happens on holiday weekends. And we always know that things slow down around Labor Day. And if you have a house where it's a family neighborhood and most people that live there have kids and it's in a good school district, well, those first couple weeks of September are always slow because everybody's getting their kids back to school. So knowing those things and being able to have an educated conversation about that. But I can't see the future. So when I'm looking at comps right now, when I'm pricing homes, I'm not looking at 6-month comps. I'm looking at 60 to 90 day comps. Those are going to give me a way better indicator about what's actually happening in the market. Because 6 months ago, things were hotter than what they are right now. So it's just knowing all these little nuances, and that helps me when I'm working with sellers price a home correctly so we can get it sold for top dollar and the seller can get as much money out of the property. But also when I'm working with buyers, I love to print out, okay, they're entertaining these 3 parts of town. Well, I can pull up information that will talk about what things are doing this year compared to last year and show okay, well, what are homes selling for? What's the average percentage? How many days are they taking to sell? Are they doing price reductions? What's the original price? What's the percentage of the original price versus the final sales price? Is that 100% of asking? Is it 95% of asking? What does that look like? So just knowing that the sky is not falling, But a lot of times it's just reining in like, okay, well, you thought you were going to get 500 for your house, but turns out a buyer's only willing to pay a 480 for it. Well, I mean, the market's kind of speaking right now. So that does not mean the sky is falling. Let me be super duper clear on that. Sky is not falling. However, just sort of managing the expectations with sellers about what their home is really worth and managing expectations of the buyers of, okay, well, we're going to see price reductions, but if somebody just did a $25,000 price reduction on their house, they're likely not going to slash an additional $50,000 off their house. So there's a little bit of that going on. Now let's talk about just like the psychology of things. It's interesting to have conversations with sellers. And like I said, I'm really trying to be super proactive about setting the expectation with my sellers about days on market, what they can expect. We're doing tons of additional research that the market wasn't requiring me to do last year, the year before. But like, for instance, we were listing a house, a 1-level villa, and it's in a part of town where they have like a few pockets around town of that same sort of home. Some have basements, some don't have basements. But what we did, instead of just looking in the specific neighborhood where the property is, because I'm like, that's only going to give me a little snapshot of what's happening and what buyers are doing in this town as a whole. So I looked at the whole entire town and then started reaching out to agents that had properties that were similar, that they either had. So there was nothing else currently for sale, but there were other ones that were under contract and recent sales. So then I contacted all those listing agents. I'm like, okay, what are you seeing? Are your open houses busy? Are you getting a lot of showings, fewer showings? How many offers did you get? Did you get multiple offers? Like, what does that look like? Are you seeing like cash buyers that are coming in with financing? So like, I'm trying to extract as much information as possible from all these other sources of properties that aren't closed yet. So unless I reached out to them, I wouldn't be able to get all that information. So that's been really, really helpful. So I'm doing that with all over, all parts of town, all different kinds of listings, because then that is helping me like set the expectation. So my clients aren't like, well, Beth, you didn't prepare us for this, or Beth, this is taking longer to sell than what we thought. Yeah, everything in general is taking longer to sell than what we had hoped for, and longer to sell than what it was taking last year. Showings are down about 25% across the metro. So showings are down, inventory's up, more buyers are sitting on the fence, but surprisingly, interest rates are the same or lower than what they were last year. So it's just sort of managing expectations, being able to be proactive with providing the information to buyers and to sellers. So like their expectation is not sitting there being grossly like overlooked. And just being able to like manage the psychology of it all. Buying and selling a home can be really stressful. So what can I do as an agent, as a professional that's been in this field for, years and years and years, to really set my clients up for success so they feel really super duper comfortable about the process and about moving forward? There's more negotiation that's happening right now. I feel like that's a really great thing. Buyers are getting a little bit more of an upper hand. I mean, buyers for the last 5 years have been like, we had to not have an inspection and concede this and give up that. And it feels like the seller won everything and we sort of got screwed. That's not really the market we're in right now. Buyers are getting some leverage back and they're feeling really good about it. And I'm really happy for buyers because it gets really weary when you're like, oh my God, like we didn't even have a say in the matter. We lost out on 5 multiple offers. And then when we finally got a house, you're basically just like, screw it, take whatever you want. Like we just want a house. And that doesn't always feel good. So when it feels good for both sides, the seller and the buyer, if the seller gets a fair price and the buyer feels like they were able to negotiate a little bit and actually have an inspection and actually have enough time to think about the purchase instead of having to make it like a split second decision that they're not feeling super comfortable about, that is win-win for everybody. I think something that's a little bit harder for sellers to wrap their brains around right now is that we aren't in 2021 or 2022 where a seller could haphazardly put their house on the market. It could look mediocre and we would still get multiple offers and they would get $30,000 over asking. We are not in that market right now. So sellers, I hate to say it, you're still getting top dollar. You're still getting a great price, but it's not that like totally, fight to the death for your property. And I say it only takes one. You could literally have one showing that walks through the door and they send you an offer. And if it's a really solid offer, I'm like, don't snooze on it. I would say negotiate it to get it to be the terms that you want and get the price that you want as close to the price you want as possible. But to think that a home is going to sell for way, way over asking, unless you're a mid-century modern, unless you're like a lake home, unless you're this special unicorn type home, it's not happening as much anymore. Even in moderately priced homes that look really, really cute. There's a house for sale around me and I saw it the first week it had gone on the market with some clients and we walked in and we were like, oh my gosh, it's so freaking cute. And they really thought hard about it. And then they went back and looked at it again and the sellers had already started moving. So then all of like the beautiful aesthetics and things in the home that made it really compelling and really like, oh my God, these sellers must be so cool. My buyer's like, she goes, I would totally be friends with these people. They look like they're so freaking cool. All of a sudden they start taking all the things out of their house that make them look cool. I'm using air quotes, right? Now all that stuff's out of the house and now it's just kind of like a basic house. And I always say this, like if your house is vacant when you have it for sale, I prefer homes that are staged. Either your furniture where I come in and like zhuzh up your decor and make sure everything is perfect, or to have a home professionally staged. When a home is vacant, I always do virtual staging, which is great, which looks good online. But when you go see the house in person and everything's vacant, I always say this, the only thing you have to focus on is the imperfections in the house versus if a home is staged and you walk in and it evokes an emotion and you're like, oh my God, this house is so cute. I love the art on the wall. That helps a buyer make an emotional connection and make that feel like, oh, I can totally envision my stuff here. Or maybe it's not their vibe, but it's the vibe that they aspire to for their next home. Staging works wonders. So there's a reason why they say staged homes can they can sell for as much as 25% over asking price because it evokes an emotion and helps a buyer envision themselves in the home. So there's all these like little nuancy things happening in the market. Interest rates are coming down, which is great. Inventory is up, but on paper, most neighborhoods are still telling us it's a seller's market. But on paper, there's more homes for sale. Not going to sugarcoat it. There are more homes for sale, which are giving buyers more opportunities. However, buyers are sitting on the sidelines longer and they're taking longer to make decisions, and the days on the market is longer. So that is a little bit of a mind shift for sellers. And sellers aren't getting the top dollar price they were in 2021 or 2022. But does that mean things are bad? I don't think so. I think it's like making things be a little bit more of a balanced market. We don't have 5 to 6 months worth of inventory yet. That's when the market really says, okay, this is a balanced market. It's not favoring buyers. It's not favoring sellers. So on paper, most neighborhoods are still favoring sellers. However, sellers, I think, have a little bit more of need to do a little bit more of a mindset shift about what their home is actually worth in this market when there's 25% more homes for sale and there's more competition. So is the sky falling? No, but I think as interest rates tick down, if interest rates do get to low 6s or even the high 5s, I think the buyers that are sitting on the fence are all going to get off the fence, and it potentially could be a bloodbath again with competition. And then what happens when competition happens? House prices go up. So if buying is on your radar, I think we should have a conversation about it. I think we should talk through your wants versus needs. what's important to you about moving. Does it make sense now? Or does it make sense for you to stay put in your home for a little while longer until interest rates go down so we can get more money for your house you need to sell? But just know that you might have more competition on the house you want to buy. This is not a one size fits all market. And I think that's great. I think there's something special to that. I think that having a plan and sitting down with me, or if you're somewhere else and your agent across the country, or if you want to be connected to someone that works similarly to how the BPR experience works with clients, I would love to connect you with an agent somewhere else in the country. But sitting down and really strategizing about a plan, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to go on the market right now. Maybe going on the market next year, if and when interest rates come down a little bit more, is more desirable to you. Maybe you want to rent your home instead of selling it and getting rid of your 3% interest rate, and then you're still going to move anyways. Like there's no one way to do this. And so having a strategic plan that works beautifully for you, your life, your family, your wealth goals, your career goals, all of those things, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you make your dreams come true and use real estate as a tool to further your financial portfolio. And keep in mind, real estate is so much more than just a roof over your head. It is a tool. It's a safe haven. It's a place for health and peace and respite. And it's also a beautiful tool to build generational wealth. So let me know, reach out. We can talk through your scenario and see what makes the most sense for you. But until next time, bus bench babes, keep your face off a bus bench and keep being the badass boss babes that you are.
Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us, and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.